let's look at example C and D, and then we'll move on from here. But when you see example C, do you remember what rule you would need to use if you find the derivative? The quotient rule. However, sometimes there's an easier way to go about it. And it's up for you as a mathematician to be able to discern what rule to use when. For example, if I had x squared minus x over x, you could say, well, I'll use the quotient rule in that situation. It's a lot easier to just divide this out and say it's x minus 1, right? And what's the derivative of x minus 1? 1. So you can see how I can take a problem that looks like it's challenging. Let's simply just use a little bit of algebra and come up with an easier example. And this would be one of those situations. And so we would rewrite f of x to be, what's the root of x divided by the root of x? 1 minus, and then we have x to the 1 over x to the 1 half. So let's try this. Yeah, I'm basically factoring a root of x out of the top and dividing it with the bottom. Okay. So for example, if you have 4 minus 6 over 2, okay, isn't that the same thing as 2 times 2 minus 3 all over 2? You're just dividing each one of those terms by 2 is all you're doing. Okay. So that's totally legal. By root of x. And then x to the 1 divided by x to the 1 half leaves me with x to the 1 half. We subtract the exponents. And 1 minus a half is, I'm doing each one. So we've got the root of x over the root of x minus x over the root of x. And so x, or the root of x divided by the root of x is 1, and then x to the 1 divided by x to the 1 half is that x to the 1 half. So that's what f of x is. So then what's f prime of x? So that's 0, right? And we dump this in front, so negative 1 half x to the negative 1 half, which is negative 1 over 2 roots of x. So I think that that's easier than going through the work of the quotient rule. I don't want the negative exponent. You could leave it as negative 1 over 2x to the 1 half, but I don't want the negative exponent. Okay, and then you look at D, and there you make a judgment call, and you say, well, I can either multiply it all out and then take the derivative, or instead what I could do is I could use the product rule. So let's use the product rule, f prime of x, and the derivative of the root of x plus 3. Have you done it enough times now where you know what the derivative of the root of x is? So you've got x to the 1 half, you take the derivative, you get 1 half x to the 1 half, right? Negative 1 half, excuse me. So therefore it's 1 over 2 roots of x. So something you want to try to kind of memorize, because it comes up a lot, is the derivative of the root of x, which is 1 over 2 roots of x. So I took the derivative of the first part, times x cubed minus 2x plus 1, plus, and then we've got the root of x plus 3 times 3x squared minus 2. You do. And I will not ask you to try to simplify that expression if you see it on the test, okay? I'm not going to give you those type of situations. I might say, now that that's the derivative, find the slope. So you would say plug in 1 and find the slope, or plug in 0, or whatever the number is. Okay, let's flip to the back side, okay? We've got really just one more example to look at. And that's this one right here. So we're going to look at the graph. And it says, using this graph, find f plus g prime of 3. So that's f prime of 3 plus g prime of 3. Okay, so what's f prime of 3? How do I determine f prime of 3 by looking at that graph? Okay, so Leah, I'm going to ask a little bit of what you were saying. You're right that we want to look at the slope at 3. Okay, so we want to look at the slope of f at 3, and it looks like it's 2 over 1 and up 2. Okay, so the slope is 2. And then g prime of 3 would be, I think that's looks like we run 2 and we go down 2, right? Negative 1. And if you have g minus f, then that's going to be g prime of 3 minus f prime of 3. Or negative 1 minus 2 is negative 3. And I have g times f of 3. So what do I do there? Yeah, the product rule. So g prime of 3 times f of 3 plus f prime of 3 times g of 3. We already know g prime of 3, it's negative 1. And we know f prime of 3, it's 2. Well, what about f of 3? That's 0. So that's what you were looking at earlier, Leah, right? Okay, thank you. And then what is g of 3? It's 4. So you can see that you get 8. And then the last one, what would we do? The quotient rule. Yep, f prime of 3 times g of 3 minus g prime of 3 f of 3 g of 3, that quantity squared. We already determined f prime of 3, it was 2. G of 3 we said was 4. G prime of 3 we said was negative 1. And f of 3 we said was 0. And what was g of 3? 4, and we square it. We get 8 over 16, which is a half. So that way we can be able to look at our graphing example. You should be able to do that part on your worksheet now. So that finishes it off for us. When we get back, you have the rest of the hour to work and ask questions. And then you have work days the next couple days here. So, okay. Go have a good one. Go get some brain food. I love the Minnesota jerseys. Go Minnesota. Go Minnesota. Yes, you can.